Hey, sorry. I guess I was trying too early when the other meeting was still going on.
No, it's our fault. We ran late by 2 minutes. Sorry.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no sweat at all. Good to see y'all. Um, so yeah, I guess I'm leading the roundtable tonight. Is Dawn the secret edgy account that is unnamed? Okay. Um, cool. Yeah. So I can I'll kick off with kind of reading the boiler. I don't know. I haven't been to one in a while. Is anyone here who has not been to a roundtable before?
Me, hi.
Hello.
I'm one of the Michelles who you've met a billion of. So I am the new Michelle, Michelle Hertzfeld. And
Yay.
it looks like folks are, so my previous work, I had a nickname. So my name is Michelle Hertzfeld, and we had a lot of Michelles there too. So they said, oh, you're going to be megahertz. So people found out about that here. And I am still going to be megahertz, so you can try that. Yeah, it's kind of a fun nickname if you're going to have one, but big shoes to like fill into. But yeah, so I just started at Protocol Labs like a week and a half ago. And I can do a longer intro if you want, but I don't want to take over the whole meeting. So that's me. I'm new, and hi.
Cool. Yeah, nice to meet you, Michelle.
Nice to
So
meet
just
you.
since there might be some other new faces here, from your point of view, let's go doing full introductions. Actually, first, would someone mind taking notes? I am not a noting multitasker. And Matt, I feel like you always step up to notes, and I appreciate you. Don't shake your head no. I do appreciate you. So yeah, I guess I'll go first, and I guess I'll just toss off to, I don't know, we'll do popcorn after. I'm Patrick, or PatCon. I am one of the, I guess I came on and related to work in the civic tech community in Toronto, where Edgy and some of these like related initiatives related to Data Together started. I'm in Toronto. I see Matt and Don every so often, and I organize with that community some regular weekly hack nights. Yeah, so that's me. Go for it, Don.
Oh, hi. I'm usually in Toronto. My name's Dawn, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Toronto. Work with people on this call for both Edge Data Together and too many other projects. And I'm actually currently in Glasgow, and so not my normal place to take a call.
B5, you next.
Hi, I'm B5. Well, my name's Brendan O'Brien. There are no other Brendan O'Briens, but I still prefer B5, so that's how we go. I've been working with Edgy for a little while in the archiving working group, and I also run a startup called Query, which is focused on doing open data sets on IPFS. And yeah, that's me. Oh, cool.
You next, Jess?
Hi, I'm Jess. I'm a member in Edgy. I'm also a PhD student in Southampton in the UK studying web archiving. Yeah, I'm involved with the archiving working group and Data Together. Edgy.
Cool. And last, Matt.
I'm Matt. Hi, Michelle. I live together with one of the other Michelles, but not you. And I have been involved with Edgy for a long time, and was kind of pretty quiescent for a long time, and I'm now trying to step back more into archiving to fill the void as people like Dawn and Jess have to step back.
Okay, so just to like give rough overview of the normal format for roundtables, they're just check-in for ongoing work and to surface larger issues that need more maybe in-depth discussion later, and they're for initial feedback on developing ideas prior to moving to decisions, and also to maintain momentum between coordinating calls. So the topic today is one that I think has been on the docket for a while, but Don messaged me a couple days ago, so I said we'd do a demo. It's basically, I was going to show how Civic Tech Toronto is experimenting with using Loomio and our experiences with that. And Loomio, in case folks didn't know, is this tool that kind of spun out of, and I might just pull up, I'll do screen sharing just while I'm talking, even though it's not necessarily needed for this bit. Oh, how do I, let's see. No one wants to see my face anyway. Share, okay. Ooh, how did my tabs get hidden now? Okay, cool. So Lumio is this rockin' tool that was created by some folks who spun out of the New Zealand Occupy movement, and it's like been, I guess it's notable because it was developed really carefully and slowly with a lot of expertise of facilitation, like in-person facilitation experts. And so it's kind of all geared around the practices that they essentially like weren't like, hey, we're going to create a digital tool that like helps people come to consensus, and without having, they understood the in-person dynamics before they moved to trying to create a digital tool. And it was about slowly like moving off the processes offline. And so it's mostly about kind of, it's about creating slower, like not as quick as an in-person meeting, but where you don't lose a lot of the properties of an in-person meeting is where they often focus. So Civic Tech Toronto recently, there is a film crew beside me. And they are like doing hydraulics or something. So can you still hear me? Okay, good. Just let me know if it gets bad. So we kind of had a process of introducing Lumio, and we're still kind of like getting in a flow with it. Generally it is, they have, for what it's worth, Lumio has these great docs that I highly recommend reading. Most of the things that I say will be from reviewing these Lumio.school docs, and I'll drop that into chat later. So just maybe the best, the little Zoom toolbar sometimes gets in the way of clicking around. So maybe this is like the first demo topic we did. So the general format is that you get a title for each like decision-making thread. So the kind of model is that things start. You create a group, you invite people, you kind of like tell them, hey, we're trying this thing. We're going to move off email. We're going to move off whatever channel that we operate in before. You need to have a lot of buy-in for that before moving over. And then you kind of frame this where there's you kind of just ask, they recommend asking a question in the initial thread, and they don't recommend jumping right to a decision. It's that you're having a conversation, and then the decision's kind of like, there's some decision-making tools built in, like little widgets almost, that you kind of drop in as many times as you need into like the evolving conversation. So at its most neutral, it's just a title, and it's a context piece. Like this whole bit is like context, and it's nothing to start with. There's nothing there, and you can kind of you can choose what you want to baseline. You can have boilerplate. For us, we have some boilerplate that I'll explain later that is informed by some in-person facilitation processes. And they also recommend, because the context can be set so that everyone can edit it, it's kind of this space where you can invite everyone to summarize like what's going on in the sometimes large threads that evolve. So just like this isn't, the main difference from Slack, I would say, is that like this is meant to be a concise history of decisions that you can refer back to, as opposed to like months and months of back scroll where it's a little bit hard to find things. And for what it's worth, the folks who created Lumio say like Lumio is not made, like it's not made to push every decision into it. It's like they kind of encourage autonomous decisions where possible. It's just when you think there might be some tensions, or when you think there's things to work through, then Lumio is a good tool to bring things into. So maybe I will explain the kind of meta process that we added on top. So essentially there is, and this is optional, this can be, there is a process in facilitation that is this idea of this recognition that, and I'm gonna maybe stop sharing screens just for a sec. Maybe, I guess I'd stopped sharing the screen already. That was probably when I was clicking buttons. Okay, so hopefully I wasn't pointing to important things. So the basic idea of ORID, and maybe I thought I was showing that on screen for a sec, so I'll go back. ORID is a facilitation framework, and here there's like, kind of when you search ORID online, ORID that is, this page comes up first on betterevaluation.org. And it's kind of this idea of that, like what these stand for is objective, reflective is the R, I is interpretive, like that's like new ideas. So it's kind of objective is like facts, and we kind of reframe these in the places where we've used this elsewhere. So there's like objective facts, Then there's R, reflective feelings. And the idea is these layer on top. So it's like you move through phases of the discussion. That first, you distinctly identify like the facts you're talking about. You distinctly identify the feelings you're talking about. They all have a place. And then the ideas is I, and D is decisional. It's where you actually like get to decisions. These are like the phases of a consultation. They can spread out over weeks, and you have whole like different sessions to discuss each, to focus on certain, kind of tease out certain aspects of the conversation. But the idea is they kind of layer. It's almost like for the first two, when you're collecting facts and feelings together, you're kind of like expanding the scope of the possible. Like you're inviting like lots of different ideas and facts, and you're kind of laying a foundation. And then when you start getting to ideas and decisions, you're kind of like honing it in and focusing and trying to get to like a solution. So what I've seen is that it's good to know this framework, just to like, almost you can tease apart really messy discussions. Even just as you're reading, people can start kind of taking on the role of kind of noting what are the facts and what are the feelings, and kind of separating them out of like large blocks of text and kind of messy, the messiness of sometimes the normal conversation. So in our use of Lumio, we suggested that people, if they felt like it, and you don't need to, they can actually like individually identify the facts that they're bringing to like, the discussion of this question, the feelings and the ideas. And so the general kind of the helpers for what identifies one thing. Sometimes it's hard to know like what is that. Facts are meant to be undisputable things that no one should disagree with. Feelings are personal sentiments. They shouldn't be challengeable. So it's kind of like when you identify something as a feeling, no one is supposed to disagree with it. It's just you're just letting them know that this thing that this surfaced for you, and you don't need to defend it with facts, but it helps. It makes kind of when a feeling is tied to facts, people might take it they might weigh it more highly, but there's no requirement for that. And then ideas are indicated by this little like the light bulb emoji, and these are possible solutions or ways forward. And the main, I guess we didn't mention it in this version, but the idea is that ideas should be informed by facts and feelings, but they can just be like free floating. Like you can just come in and immediately drop an idea, but it will tend to be more supported if it's just like informed by some feelings or backed by them and some facts. So how we use Lumio is there was a lot of pulling this from another. So it looks like it's me saying a bunch of things here, but it's that I was taking on the role of the facilitator as pulling things from Slack that were kind of like spread in a conversation. And kind of trying to bring them into this like system of record. So I would say like it has, yeah, I guess there is the side that like at the very least, Lumio could be a system of record for decisions that kind of tend to happen in messier spaces like email or in person or verbally out loud in a meeting or in Slack. And kind of a way that the Lumio team recommends introducing this is that it's often kind of one person facilitating and pulling things, extracting them out, and then kind of poking people like, hey, do you mind if like, we all collectively decided earlier to use Lumio. I pulled your thoughts over into, this, I pulled your comments from where you put them into this other system. And if you felt like joining us over there, then that would be really appreciated. So yeah, and they recommend that as a tactic to kind of bolster this like agreement that you've come to, because people, it's hard to break habits, and people will kind of just drop thoughts related to a conversation in whatever places they were used to. So the idea is that when someone sees something that they agree with, they would kind of just +1 it or use one of these reaction emojis. Ooh, I'm not logged in, so that's not actually going to show up right now. But yeah, so it's just so. And then I guess the most, I should get logged in before I, just 1 sec. So the idea, hopefully this works. Okay, did not create a new account for me. So I should like wrap this up quick because I want to leave time for, actually, you know what, there's the best, I explain what a proposal is first, because this is kind of like the workhorse of Lumio. It's that you're talking and talking and talking, and then anyone at any point can add a proposal into a conversation. Maybe I'll do this with an old sample thread. Just, well, actually, I have created an Edgy account way back when. So new thread. How should we make decisions together? And some boilerplate context. This one will be private because this group is private. And people can invite themselves through an invite link, or I could send emails, but I'll just leave it. So say I decide to use this format. I feel that decisions made at in-person meetings are hard to follow after the fact. Some feeling. Just words that are sometimes said out loud or sometimes buried inside meeting notes. So that might be something I say and add some other facts in, and then I have, maybe my idea after a while is, well, we should use Lumio for slow asynchronous decisions. And that really is, I probably should say more facts and things before like jumping right to an idea, but whatever, that's what I did there. And so I could say, this is speeding through many of the steps. Normally you'd want to see, you wouldn't want to, there is one tactic that the Lumio team does recommend, whereas if you think that maybe everyone agrees, like if you genuinely suspect that, then it's good to sometimes start with a proposal just to like lay the lines. And, the idea is this is, nothing's binding. So Lumio goes to great lengths to kind of frame, when a poll closes, it doesn't like send out an announcement like, hey, everyone's agreed to do this thing and now it's done. It doesn't like, it basically like all polls and little widgets that you can add are considered like straw polls. So the outcome, like the decision, is actually like a thing that you enter afterwards based on like kind of seeing the results of all the little interactions and votes that people have had. So it doesn't like it's still up to the people, the humans involved, to decide what happens. So let's start using Lumio in advance of meetings to inform meeting decisions. So there's some other, I could add detail, but I won't right here. So I think by default it gives a few days that this will be open, but people have the opportunity to like agree and write some like details on why, abstain, or disagree. And blocks are a thing that's kind of a holdover from Occupy sign languaging. But it's this idea that it's like a strong, like you at your core disagree, and you should use these very, super judiciously. But just say, if I say agree, it's going to show up as that pie chart. And these are meant to stay open for a few days. You can actually leave them open for weeks, depending on how often the group that you're with is prepared to engage with a thing like this. So you know what? I think I should be leaving more time for questions. I don't know if I'm explaining this in a clear way. So I'm going to mute myself, and curious if others have thoughts or questions on like how we've used it. Ooh, I gotta plug in my.
Yeah, I think maybe there's some raised hands that you can't see in screen share.
Yeah. Let me just try to get out of this. Yeah, Linux is really, I don't know how to get out of screen share mode. I'll just randomly.
Only by accident, right?
I think. Did someone request?
That was me, because then I thought I could turn it off.
Maybe that will work. Oh, wait, I'm not sure. Hold on. I'll just randomly click where the buttons are. Does that work? I wish I could give a screenshot. It's like all Linux going like wonky with the visuals, like everything's bleeding.
Well, I have a question.
Also, you're low battery, man.
I know.
You're not
Yeah,
gonna make it
or-
through the
I know.
Let me plug this
You're
in.
gonna make it.
Okay, just assume my face is here. I'll figure it out eventually. Could you do stacked on or someone?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I saw Matt P first.
Well, so what I'm thinking is, this is a tool to facilitate decision making. Of course, we at Data Together still don't know how to make decisions, and so we, it doesn't solve that problem. That's for sure.
True.
What I do like this idea of having the proposals kind of stand out, so that's a way in which it's different from say a Slack conversation or something like that, that the proposals kind of would potentially stack up and you'd be able to see what is on the table as part of the conversation in a special way.
And it's very sensible with, I actually did, if I could find a way to so I did some sketching trying to figure out trying to show how it could affect, am I unsharing yet? I'm still sharing my screen, huh? Yeah, I escaped. Okay. I don't know if someone helped me with that, but thank you. So I think I was trying to, essentially right now, we kind of go into meetings with maybe a sense of where the vote will be, but that's kind of based on fuzzy conversations. And so basically we go into meetings probably, and this is not just us, this is everyone. We often go into meetings without data, and then we suss it all out in person by seeing people and seeing their faces and getting, a well-facilitated meeting. We'll get to a decision and we'll actually we'll be able to surface any tensions in the meeting itself. And we, I think, often try to do that because it's really hard to do with text and hard to do it in a digital system. So what I think what the idea is that the decisions in Lumio could actually be kind of upper, basically that no decisions are made in meetings. They're kind of surface 2 or 3 weeks in advance. The idea is that they sit for a while and people have a chance to create data that and create information that then comes into the meetings, and the meetings are snap. It's maybe there's a few things to suss out, but the decisions are much clearer because everyone slowly over time, with a long runway, has had a chance to chime in and get to these nuanced views. But it doesn't need to be structured necessarily. Even the little emoji legend that's just an extra layer, and it doesn't need to be used. In fact, it might be too much. And it could be just that a few people have that in mind, and it's sometimes maybe I've heard that someone who is a big fan of this ORID framework essentially goes and reframes for people. It's I'm seeing this fact and this feeling, and kind of teases that out themselves and maybe puts it in the summary, but others don't have to engage with that style. Go for it, Don.
Yeah, not to exactly repeat what I said, but I sort of maybe agree a bit with Matthew. This feels like it's providing another way of thinking about the mechanisms we want to do it, and I really appreciate that. I know, Petcon, I've seen you sort of draw in the ORID framing, even if it's not consistent, but I think that that you're not doing it consistently, but even if not everyone is taking it up, it offers something valuable. And I think part of it on our end is we do need to make a decision about the mechanism, but there are some other parts around who participates that we want to also pin down, but this might be a great way of ensuring the people we think should participate are participating, because it visibilizes it in a different way than Slack.
Yeah, it definitely can be. I don't know. I know some members of the Arc Civic Tech Toronto, particularly those who were just used to it being Slack, even though it was kind of a lot. there's, I think for what it's worth, it's people who weren't there during the in-person decision to use Lumio, who I think didn't see the conversations around, and people shared a lot about how they thought Slack was failing them and too overwhelming, and they wanted a more clear place where decisions were happening. Just to know, like, atomically, like, oh, there's this conversation that's trying to get to a decision, and there's this one, and I'm not going to lose it in the background. And folks who did not, the people who did not hear the voicing of the problems with Slack have been the ones who were not on board for, and kind of like poking holes in our use of it and being like, hey, let's just bring some things back to Slack. It's just another place to check. Like, Lumio is just another place to check, that is. So we perhaps did not as good a job as we could have with, like, bringing along the people who were not in the in-person meeting where Lumio was decided as the tool. Yeah, it is another place though. A quieter place maybe, but maybe that's just because it's slow at the beginning. But I think, yeah, it doesn't ask for as much at the speed of Slack. The format doesn't, or the platform doesn't. Go for it, Brendan.
Yeah, I think thank you so much for demoing this, Pekon. And my other question, could you mute really quick? Because I can hear myself, and I hate hearing myself. I only want all of you to hear me, which is somehow paradoxically the case. I really like the idea of this because I keep thinking about the way that we have done, like, when to meet meetings, and like someone just basically hops in Slack and says, I made this poll, fill out this thing, and sort of, and it feels like this is approaching something like that. So if not Lumio, some system like this, I don't even know if we just start with like a Word doc and like it's the decisions Word doc, and we just like, or Google Doc, and that just prevents us from it. Even if that's just to sort of baby step us away, that doesn't involve setting up another platform. But for me, that the idea of being able to see some summary of decisions that are currently on the table that require my attention, where we're working async, that can say, hey, we want input on this, that the time to give input on this choice is here, and we'll make this decision in meetings as you suggested. It seems like might be a nice way to sort of structure things and keep things moving in terms of decision structure. To Matt's point, we really haven't addressed the how do we make decisions, which is, to me, still a separate and a roadblock conversation that we'll have in a meeting. But yeah, I'm enthusiastic about the concept and would totally experiment with Lumio, just because it seems like it's got a prettier UI and it makes it easier to sort of think through proposals that are on the table.
Anyone else? Yeah, go for it, Michelle.
I just had a general question, then. We actually tried to use Lumio in a previous job I was in, but that particular community liked GitHub so much that we did this sort of thing in GitHub. I'm guessing that your community, that is not a good solution and you're looking for something else, huh? long discussion. We don't have to get into it right now, but that is what happened in my previous life with Lumio. But also Lumio has like expanded as a product since the last time I looked. It looks a lot more mature since the last time I peeked in there. So.
Yeah, I really feel for the Git. Like I feel very comfortable on GitHub, but I think there's
plenty of people. Terrible idea.
Yeah, lots of folks at Edgy. And I'm not sure whether Lumio will be any better. It's just a new thing, but maybe Lumio is still another thing. But go for it, Matt. I guess we're at the end. There's two more things I'd say after Matt, but
just I think Data Together has tons of GitHub presence, and so something integrated with GitHub is potentially useful. But we have a problem that we have lots and lots of stuff and very little decisioning. And so in a way, like Lumio or something that just breaks us out of whatever we're doing and asks us to make a decision might be preferable to integration. I don't know.
So Civic Tech Toronto, Lumio was great. We have no budget, so I think they took pity on us and they bumped, it's free for up to 10 people, which I don't know if fits our model of thinking. It could fit if we wanted to have these kind of stewards who are like bringing things in, and maybe, I don't know, maybe only up to 10 people actually wanted to participate in the decision making. It's a little limiting. It does, I think they charge $30 $39 per month for the next level, which is up to 50 or 100 people. But they were like really eagerly, like, we just filled out a quick Google form, and they, at least for us, they took the price down to $9 a month. So yeah, they knocked off like 70%. I think that was, we had no budget. I'm not sure whether that would be the case. Whether we could get the same deal with Edgy, but and the last thing is that I think I dropped a link. It's Zoom is really wonky on Ubuntu, but I dropped a link in the chat. If not, I'll drop it in Slack about the Inspiral handbook. Inspiral, to be totally brief, is the organization, the weird cool co-op thing that created the product of Loomio. So they use it for their own internal things, and they share all their agreements. And so they have a document called the decision-making, or the decisions agreement. It's how they make decisions together. And there's lots of, like, this is kind of well exercised within a certain context, and they kind of share this document that says, yeah, basically they say, like, they have guidelines for how long the timeframes that decision should have. And so they use these in Loomio, and they like, anyway, it might be more than we need, but it's kind of inspirational to just see how, like, oh, all these things that we don't have in terms of process, you can kind of see what they needed to define in order to be able to move, to be able to use this tool. It's a little bit of social structure. Anyone else? We're over by 4 minutes, so I don't want to keep anyone too much longer.
I had another agenda item that I wanted us to talk about, which was summer schedule for these calls. But just wondering if people are okay, and it's fine if they have to take off for, just give us 5 more minutes. Thank you. Great. So basically we had said earlier when we started hosting these weekly roundtables that we expected dropping down to a summer schedule. And summer is upon us, almost ready now, it's here. And so I wanted to like maybe just revisit that, but then also link it to the conversation we had about kind of having this monthly reading club, book club, study group, I don't know what it's called, and see if we could imagine like, or just speak a little bit to our availability over the summer. I think many of us have said that they have travel plans, so we don't anticipate, and also it's summer, don't anticipate being like fully available. So yeah, just wanted to like maybe open that up if people have immediate thoughts, and then maybe also Nat P, because you were kind of leading on the book club thing, if you wanted to give a bit of a reminder, because I think it hasn't been on everyone's minds. And it just I just recently remembered it.
Yeah, I don't know that I was ever leading on that, but thank you, Don, for the usual extra credit that I get from you. I think it would be fun to do some reading. I think it would be a way of like staying in touch with why are we doing this and what do we want to get out of it. And Don and I a long time ago made a kind of like quasi-syllabus-y thing a long time ago. And the thought was to meet once a month. And in the last couple of emails, one of which happened while I was away, it seemed like Monday wasn't such a great time for that meeting. So we could schedule another time. And we could do it once in June and continue to do it once a month. Maybe not everybody can make every one. I saw Pat's hand up, but I don't know if there's anybody else's hand up.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I wanted to ask, like, do we think reading club could be a way to pull in, like, will it be something that feels welcoming to new people, or could it be made something? And I guess I feel that that kind of feels like an overriding sort of thing. Like, is it welcoming to new people? Then it like gets very enthusiastic because it feels like we need particularly emphasis on that. Yeah, but anyway, it depends how we gear it, I suppose.
So can I, a couple things. One, we reached out specifically to like Evan and Protocol Labs folks, as maybe this being framed a little bit more as a way to have a conversation with people at Protocol Labs who are and hopefully Query, who are thinking about similar questions. So I think our lens was not, is this immediately welcoming to every newcomer? But I would also add to that, with Toronto Mesh, we ran a reading group, and we're like really aggressive. We had like 5 readings, but like everyone had to read 1 per week. And new people did come to it. So I think if we're good with how we publish it, it can still be a thing that new people feel interested in showing up at, and might actually provide more structure so people know what they're getting into. But that also, because it's summer, I feel like the emphasis should not, my sense is that summer is a bad time to aim to do a lot of recruiting. So I think we should imagine interested individuals and giving them more handholds, but then also like cementing potential, existing relationships.
Go ahead, Pat Con.
Bad for our own capacities, or bad for, so the thought was like that summers are the time in our community where, the civic tech community, where it's like things ramp up and people seem to be more available. But yeah, our own capacities.
Yeah, so we found last year with Edgy that it was the opposite. And then our own capacities were lower. So I would say bad in that we would imagine less new people coming across us. And then, I think we're really stuck on an academic schedule. So like it just being a bad time for most individuals.
And that we would do a bad job of helping people enter. And so when people stumble upon us, they just bounce off because nobody's responding on their side. Go ahead, B5.
Yeah, I think we could do some light outreach. Why not? I love the idea of +1 idea of chatting once a month. If we do one in June, as long as we can get at least 2 weeks of heads up. I know that I regularly attend the IPFS all hands on Mondays, and Megahertz here. I'm assuming you may be joining some others. There's no reason we can't just chuck into a couple IRCs. Hey, this thing's coming up in a few weeks. It's about distributed stuff. It's not unrelated. And maybe we get some people showing up and maybe we don't, but like I think that's just like bare minimum light outreach that we could do that isn't really going to like stress anybody out. I'd be more than happy to do that anyways. And so and then I happen to know everybody who works at Query, and so we could get that message out pretty easily. And so so that might be a nice starting point.
Yeah, and when we have the distributed web summit that you guys are going to, you can ask them. Sorry, Pat, can't go ahead. I should have put my...
No. I'm raising my hand like every time, like ping pong. What idea? I guess. Light bulb. No. What if like for each reading, kind of the readings were paired with kind of a group that we thought we could like a specific intention of putting a reading on, or thought process around it was like who would be interested in this and that we could loop in. Would that be like kind of, I don't know, it's not specifically about like recruiting newcomers, but it's kind of we're thinking about the readings from like pulling other people in, which I feel like everyone is anyhow, but.
Go DC Walk.
So we imagined it, so there's a theme for each week, and one of the weeks really connected well with the Edgy environmental data justice folks. So I think a little bit of that going on. I just want to say, like, honestly, like, I feel like that might be too much effort. Like, I just think it's like, it's summer. Like, we like just thinking about EDJ trying to arrange these open calls in June to like host, like convene like public conversations about stuff. Like we're already hitting people on summer schedules. Like, I think it's a great idea, but my sense is that might be like, this is not the right time to try and pull that in.
Yeah, and in response to that, also putting myself at the front of the stack again. I think it's been like 3 months, we haven't made any progress on it. Maybe it would make sense to just start a reading group and hope that we do a decent enough job that it's fun enough for at the beginning that people will keep coming. That would be, and then after a month or two, we could try to be fancier. That's kind of, I don't know. How do you feel about that, Beckham?
No. I would like, Hank had a thing to say.
Sure.
I was just +1ing the like start with low expectations, keep it friendly and internal, and hope people come to it, and then we can expand with success.
I think everyone is right. Sorry for slowing things down.
Don has a thing. Go Don.
Yeah, so just maybe, so it sounds like people are keenish, I don't know, willing to move forward on reading group once a month. And so then would it make sense to aim to have that plus one check-in kind of call? Like, because there, I think, are some lingering things we want to have conversations about before the in-person meeting in August. That would mean we would have at least 3. We could imagine maybe 4 calls before then. I know that Matt and I have committed to being on the organizing team. Woo! So there will probably also be some organizing bits to that, but that won't really ramp up until July. Okay, and then Jess, you have a. Oh, go.
Sorry. I was gonna say, I think I've heard I'm being offered up from Protocol Labs.
Oh, yay!
As well, so just so you know.
Fantastic.
I think you'll have at least some sort of help from our direction, so we'll talk more later. Sorry to interrupt.
That's great.
Some stories there. You just offered to help.
But Don, are you suggesting, and I'm confused, Jess is saying, can we have them back to back? Did you mean like once a month, a long meeting, Jess, or did you mean?
I was just, I guess, like kind of terms like how long you want to have like a reading group. You know, what's a like reasonable time frame to have like a reading group check-in? 30 minutes seems like kind of short in my view, but I haven't been involved in that many reading groups. But I would say like if we're aiming for like once a month reading group check-in, and we had been talking about moving roundtables to once a month because of the summer, I just wonder like if you have them separate, then that actually means that some of us will be seeing each other, you know, twice a month, which is totally cool with me. But you know what I mean? Like, do we want to, if you schedule it near the same time, but then it becomes like a 2-hour block or something, and then I don't know, that's kind of may not be good either.
Can I jump on?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I'm actually down for a longer single stint. I think that coincides better with, and particularly because I think the upside of the reading group is it can kind of stay for as long as you can, and then you know, it doesn't need to be this like super high commitment thing. So I'd propose that we just do like our half-hour check-in prior to the reading group, where we just sit down and make sure that any sort of like things that need to be crossed off are dealt with, and then we can go into a nice, more relaxed. I can get a beer and we can talk and go for an hour into a reading group, which I think I'd love personally. And then we're just meeting fewer frequency, but for longer duration, but then I can just plan around that.
Yeah. I think that sounds great, with the caveat that we should expect to occasionally informally, you know, see each other, because otherwise once a month is close to nothing in terms of remembering what the hell is going on in one's own commitments and stuff.
Yeah, part of the reason I'm bringing this up is because I know that I'm sitting with you on a hiring committee, and like I'm doing a weekly call with people at Protocol. Like there's definitely some like connective tissue in this group that I know that I can personally rely on, and we should just make a point of like surfacing some of that in Slack so that others can see that we haven't gone totally dark. That would be, I think that's very important.
That's great. And does that mean, Don, do you want to like do a poll, or do you want to just schedule something here right now?
Well, I think because there's crossover with Protocol folks, we should schedule a poll, because that was sort of the main concern about Mondays already being overloaded with 3 or 4 standing meetings. So that we'll imagine probably not doing our thing on this time and pulling for a new one. But we'll keep in mind that if there is a, you know, like if we need to schedule like a check-in that's like a 30 minutes, we'll do that around the Mondays still, but that we'll be meeting monthly some other time. Okay, so I can pick up on that email thread, and then we'll distribute it in the Slack, and aim, you know, for like first week of June to have picked our first date, to give people probably 3 weeks to read, because we were thinking like end of June.
I will respond to that thread from my new email address, so you can have it in the
Yay! Yay! Great. Well, Pekka, parting thoughts.
I just do we want to put any sort of action item or test thing around trying Lumio, or is it just, I don't know, do we want to extract an action item of some sort? I could just create a meta one about like how should we use Lumio, and it could be we shouldn't. That could be the decision that immediately wins. But then it's at least, I don't know, people can drop some thoughts in there. Does that sound reasonable?
I think it's great. I'd love to try it.
Okay, sounds good. I'll do that.
So great to meet you all.
Nice to meet you, Michelle.
Yeah, you too,
pleasure
Michelle.
meeting you, Michelle. Come back whenever you want, or whenever there's a meeting. Yeah.
I'll see you before then. I'll come.
All right. See all you lovelies.
All right.
Cheers,
Okay,
guys.
later
Bye.
on.
Ciao, ciao.